Good morning, TEDx. In life, we are constantly faced with choices. Choices that we believe will define our future, but in fact, they have already defined the present moment. We are living in our choices, in the web of our choices, and we are conditioned to think that we can't, we shouldn't, it's too expensive, it's risky, do something safer. It's stupid. So, we are living in a life where we end up living in a routine of what we think is safe. And I thought about it. I wasn't stupid, I wasn't dumb. What is it safe? What does safe mean? Maybe being a lawyer, a businessman. What is the safe gender orientation? Heterosexual male. So, what is a safe place to be? Where you grew up. So, I started living my life in this routine, in this repetitive loop. It was boring. So, I started thinking, what do I want? What do I want? And I used to watch, there was a little stone next to me that said, it's never too late, on my desk. And I would think, it's never too late. That's not for me, that's for lucky people. But one day, I woke up and a stone appeared. And that stone was bravery. And I started exploring it and thinking, what would happen if I didn't think about how I would make others proud, but if I would do very selfishly what I really wanted to do for myself, who I wanted to be for myself. So, I went closer to the stone, I looked at it, thought about it, listened to it. And I finally touched it. It was an idea that anything is possible. And I started exploring that idea and breaking out of my safe zone. Here. And then I had another idea. And I thought, what's going on with these ideas? They're everywhere. And they were free. If I had $1 for every idea that I have, I would be a billionaire. And I started exploring my life. What could I do now that I don't have these limits? Like, I could walk out of this red carpet circle. And I said, I remembered myself. When I was 3 years old walking at school, they would take us once a week to the cinema. And they would take us and we would sing, Macaronia, macaronia, cinema, cinema, macaronia, metima. It means nothing. It means cinema, cinema, pasta with meat. But it meant a lot to me because I saw the cinema and this other world opened up to me. And I started exploring. And I said, I want to be a filmmaker. And I quit my job. I came out of the closet and I started exploring life. And the next thing that happened is I was at Columbia University working a job. I met some people in film and I saw them. And I said, can I help you? And I helped them. And I sat in the director's chair one day and I knew that that was what I was brought to this world for. I loved it. And everything started changing. Things started coming my way. The universe, abundant. I met these amazing film people. I met Bill Skarsgård one day, who maybe you know him. He's the clown from It, the best-selling horror movie of our time. And I had this moment, they call it the elevator pitch. You have a few seconds to tell someone what you want. So if you run into someone you really want to talk to, think, what would you say? So I told him my idea, and they jumped on board, my friend Emma and Bill, and we did this short film. And then things kept going on. Film festivals, this, that, travel. Life was really happening. And then I said, why don't I make a feature film? A psychological thriller. So I started doing that. And I met this amazing actress, Leslie Ann Lopez, who is the sister of Jennifer Lopez. And she sang opera. And someone had told me once, you will lose nothing. But I was still afraid So I was exploring, and when I met her, she came into my film. And when I saw one day, I saw her child, Brandon. Brandon was this amazing artist. And then, through my coming out journey, I decided to volunteer for an organization called the Trevor Project, which is the leading suicide prevention line for LGBTQ youth. And at that point, everything was starting to come together in a very strange way. So the Trevor Project approached me and said, we would like to hear the story of Brandon in our annual fundraiser. And I was like, of course. I said, why don't we make a film about it? So we made a little film with Brandon and their coming out journey. Brandon was born a girl and knew that they were in the wrong body, so they decided to change their body, and they transitioned. And that's what the story is about. And the story started unfolding. And long story short, it was in festivals. It was in Jennifer Lopez was tweeting about it, posting about it. And then we entered Tribeca Film Festival, and then it was at the United Nations in the historic 50th Stonewall anniversary. And I remember everyone always telling me when I was younger that I had to figure out my stuff, that I didn't know what I was doing. It was all scattered, and it was, and it is, because each of us has a different DNA. Each of us has to figure out their life. And there's not one path, one way. If there was, we'd all be on the same little white track, walking it. Each of us, it's a web, and it spreads out. And I'm still figuring it out. We're all figuring it out. That's why we're here. That's why we're learning. That's why we're sharing our stories. And I was blessed with so many opportunities that I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't be fighting my past anymore. My choices before I touched that stone were also a part of me, and they led me to this moment here with you. And I always say a circle is a line bent over time, and we're all inside that circle, and we need to embrace everything within it and everything outside it, and then we are free. And at that point, I decided that little stone, to let it go. I don't need it anymore. I can let it go. We can all let go of that stone and be free. My fear was keeping me back, but I was ready. And I let it go. And I embraced my heritage. My grandfather started a tiny company back in 1949 following the war. He had this idea. He was a prisoner of war. He was betrayed by the ones he saved. And he was imprisoned for 7 years. And in prison, he would draw and he would write poems, which I take that from him, I hope. But he had a vision of showing the world, educating people through small ships. He had nothing. He said in his book, which he wrote, that he would look at his neighbors and they would be eating nice bread. And he had black bread in his hands. So as he would be eating the black bread, he would think of the bread that they would be eating and imagine it. And my father took over the company, and that idea manifested into a fleet of mega yachts traversing the planet, small ships, educating people. Harvard, National Geographic, everyone charters these little boats and goes to these magnificent places learning. But it wasn't over. The third generation had arrived, And we realized that these boats are actually the perfect platforms for social impact. We love champagne, we love vacationing, but what we love even more is learning about the places that we go. And we joined Inside Out. It's an amazing project created by JR, who actually started it from TEDx. He won the $1 million prize, and they said, do whatever you want. And he said, I want to do impact photography all over the world that spreads awareness. And we went to Africa, and we built a little school. And my friends, Kwaku Mandela, and as well my friend and actress, Emma Hepburn Ferrer, joined our cause. You might both know them. They are the third generation of Nelson Mandela and Audrey Hepburn. And they joined the cause, and we spread their photography with the kids' photographs. And we created the Lamin Koto Super School in the middle of West Africa. It was amazing. On those days when I go to bed at night, I feel good about myself. It was a really amazing experience. All the kids, they joined. We created a school platform with art and photography and built wells and clean water infrastructure. And this is just the prototype. We call it the prototype. This is the first of many schools that we will be creating. And my passion, cinema, came back. And I remembered, what was my best time ever when I would go to the cinema? So we created the cinema experience in the Gambia. And we played children's films, Lion King, other films. We joined Inside Out, and we would play these films for these children that lived in villages without electricity. So they would all gather, make popcorn, and have the time of their life. And we eventually placed a little dot with Inside Out in West Africa, in the Gambia, one of my favorite countries. And that was a satisfying moment. But back home in New York, where I lived, I felt like I was helping the Trevor Project, but was that enough? Was that enough? And we decided to put together this documentary that played all over the festivals and is showing at all the schools in New York and expanding. And with the Trevor Project, we are doing that work for the LGBTQ community, LGBTQIA+ community that really needs our support. Let's have a look at...
Sexual preference has to do with who you go to bed with, and your identity is who you go to bed as.
The hardest part is always telling people. Like, that is always the hardest.
So when my child told me when I look in the mirror, I don't feel comfortable in the body that I'm in.
Art was a place where I could be myself, where I could do what I wanted, and I didn't have to worry about anybody else finding out about it.
And Draw With Me eventually screened at the United Nations.
What we would discuss was very much like localized. It was very much about what was going on within the community around us. So like being here and being able to have like go back there and tell them like, hey guys, there are like people like out there in like bigger organizations like the UN that are like taking like actually discussing this and are like taking care of it for us. Like we're not alone, even if it may feel like that when we're like just in some suburb somewhere just talking about how our teachers are awful.
And right here, the TEDx volunteers and core members are doing the same, creating awareness and educating. And I asked the head curator, tell me what you think is one of the impelling stories of challenge, and it was Constantina. Let's hear her story.
Hello, Impel. Hello, TEDxUTHLarissa. My name is Constantine Venetopoulos, and I am the social media manager and translator in the marketing team of TEDxUTHLarissa. There have been many challenges in my life, but I think the biggest one is that I have cancer, and I am currently overcoming it. Being open about my challenges is not only being honest to myself about, things that happen in my life, but it's also about helping others in the challenges that they may have to overcome in their life. I think my message to people who are focusing on their career and their personal goals is to just take a step back. Like, take a step back and think on what you want to do with your life, and maybe try to enrich yourself before you try to apply anything towards your career. Because before I got sick, I thought everything was heads on about work and making money, but once something like this happens to you, you realize that it's only about the moments that you live now rather than what you're going to live later. If someone says something's impossible, my reaction to them would be like, if it has happened to at least one person, then it's possible. And if it hasn't, there's a first time for everything.
And it's important for all of us to remember that by taking risk, we won't lose anything. And my grandfather, when he was looking out in the ocean to his first wooden boat, would never have imagined it would all have led here. Or perhaps he did. And he wrote a book called Choris Fovala Me Pathos, which means without fear but with passion. And I hope it teaches us to be passionate about life and not waste it away, because life is short, so we should impel and live the best life that we can. Thank you very much.